Hello and welcome to ARK, the complete series. Well, today's episode is all about gacha breeding. In the previous episode we did a lot of gacha taming. I did quite a bit of gacha testing as well, actually, to find out what their preferred food was. But it doesn't end there. You've got to spend quite a lot of time actually doing breeding. And that's for two reasons. One is you want a gacha, well, all of your gachas that are going to produce your resources, whether that's the actual resource itself that you want to keep, or whether it's going to be crystals that have got loot in them and high quality loot. You want to have a high base crafting skill to begin with, because then that makes it easier to get to that higher level that you're aiming for. The higher that is, the more resources you'll get, the more chances of loot you'll get, the better loot quality that you'll get from them as well. So, although I've got all of these gachas, to be honest, there's no further use for them, sadly. I mean, they do all look sad, but yeah, I can understand why. So what I've done is I've actually picked out two, which I'll show you over here. These two have been picked out basically because this one's got the higher crafting skill, which is 139. It doesn't really matter what this one is, because I'll breed these two together, and what I'm really focusing on is her 139 crafting skill. Anything that comes out of her basically that doesn't have 139 crafting skill, we won't keep. But there's something else we need to focus on, which makes this even more random and needing even more breeding, and that's to do with the actual resources that they produce. Ideally, what I want a pair of gachas that will give me element dust. There are other resources I'm going to be interested in, especially things like black pearl, for instance, but it's those two that I'm focusing on, so it's going to be a case of I need to do a lot of breeding. Now, this particular gacha that we've got here, she produces, let's see, just get a bit closer. You can see on the wheel that we've got here, we've got an option called production, and it gives you a long list of all the different resources that this gacha can produce. So if you were to select one of these, like flint for instance, it'll just produce nothing but flint. If I select any, it'll produce anything from this list. But the trouble is that list's pretty random. There's a pretty long laundry list of like resources gachas can produce, so it's random when the gacha gets created. It's quite random, you know, what its list is. There's common ones, rare ones, and so on, right the way up to the very rare, which is the element dust. But the trouble is that doesn't transfer to offspring. The crafting skill will transfer, but the production won't. So it doesn't matter what these two produce. I mean, let's see what this one does. I mean, obsidian would have been useful, so would oil, but it doesn't really make a difference. What these can produce isn't going to be, you know, transferred onto their offspring. That baby, when it comes out, I've got to do two checks now. I need to check, does it have the 139 crafting skill, and what resources can it produce? Does it produce resources that I need? But having said that, there's an extra step I need to do now, because, well, this gacha here, as my luck would have it, is a female. And that means she can only breed with one other gacha at a time. If it had been a male, I could have bred her with multiple gachas, multiple females, and then we'd have been able to produce gachas at a much quicker rate. So there's a few things I need to keep an eye out for here. One, I need a male. Don't care what resources it's got, but as long as it's a male that's got 139 crafting skill. And then we're looking for resources, so any gacha that gets spit out here which has got a specific resource I'm interested in, we'll keep that one. So yeah, I can see me having to do quite a bit of breeding here. So I'm going to start with two, and I can see it's going to build up, so once we start making some progress, I'll bring you back. Ooh, crikey, what are the odds of that? The first baby that they actually produced actually has a mutation. I can't quite tell straight up what the mutation is, and to be honest, it doesn't really matter that much. But it's a case of, well, we're kind of on the right path in the sense that it's got the 139 crafting skill. It is a female, so I can't use her yet for the actual breeding. I could do potentially once we actually get a male. But let's just have a quick peek. and see what she can produce. Ooh, now she's a keeper because she produces black pearl. So, we're going to rename her. You shall be henceforth known as female black pearl. Because I do want to keep her for that specific reason. But black pearls I definitely want. So, anything else of use? Oh, now she does silica pearls as well. Wow. You are definitely a keeper, you are. Right. So, my actual breeding settings are pretty high, along with my taming settings. So that's pretty cool, that. So, I'm going to take her to one side for now. Keep her out of the way and let them two get back to breeding. Wow, you're sad already, Struth. It's a trouble. You've got to keep these things 14 foundations apart. I'm pretty sure when I first played Extinction that it used to be 12 foundations, but now they've got to be 14 foundations apart. If you've got two Gachas of the same gender that aren't, 14 foundations apart, they actually get sad and they don't produce anything. It doesn't affect the mating, as you can see. I mean, these two are miffed. And there's one thing I like actually to fix this bit. This didn't work when the game first came out, because what was supposed to happen was, if it was sad, there was two ways to tell. One, you've got those like dual little lights above the back, but also they were supposed to look away from you. So you can see there, it's actually looking away. So it's looking forwards, but if I go up close, it turns its face away because it's sad. Now in comparison, if you look at like the owl here, Aussie Owl, now he's looking at me. He's actually following where I'm at, whereas they're deliberately looking away. But anyway, I must admit yeah, what are the odds of the first actual one popping out with an actual mutation? I mean, one thing to point out is I didn't imprint it because there's literally 0 point in doing it. I've actually tried it before, and the crafting skill does not improve with imprinting. So there's literally no point for me in printing any of these Gachas. So yeah. We're off to a good start, I must admit, because Black Pearl is definitely something I want. Now it's a case of getting back with the rest of the breeding. See you in a while. Well, we've now got a male that's got the 139 crafting skill. You can see that down there. I mean, he doesn't have any mutations, which, to be honest, doesn't really matter, quite frankly. But it's a case of... he does actually produce metal, which is quite handy. So, I'm actually going to keep him... for a couple of reasons. So he's going to be producing metal for us. I mean, yeah, we can produce metal quite easily. I mean, we've got the Angelo, there's quite a lot of metal up there, there's metal over there. But if I've got a metal farm going on where I'm constantly producing metal from Gachas, it saves me a lot of time. We'll build up quite a lot of metal and then just get that converted to iron. So it just saves me time in the long run. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave those two to breed. May as well. And what I've done is I've separated out all the Gachas. Most of those over there are males. I've actually got two females. One does obsidian and oil, and then the first one, I've renamed her because she does black as well as silica pearls. But what I did is I split out the males and the females, because obviously the males are more used to me now. But the females, I started lining them up because now that I've got a male, I can actually get him to mate with quite a few of these at the same time. Before I do that, I'm just going to make sure everybody's on passive. So I can get him to mate with all of these. Again, it doesn't really matter what they produce, because what the actual baby produces is going to be random anyway. All that matters is his crafting skill, and this is going to really improve my my breeding rate. So I'm going to get all of these to start breeding and see if that'll work. So yeah, you can breed with her. Yeah, so you can get all the way out to her as well. So at the moment there's only two of them. Two females, I should say, that have got the 139 crafting skill. And what I'm going to do is, as we get more and more females, I'll just start slowly replacing these ones that don't have that 139 crafting skill. with the ones that do. So then basically it's going to be a case of all of the babies that get produced, they'll all have 139 crafting skill. And then it's just a matter of picking which ones I want to keep because of the actual resources that they produce. So looks like everybody's mating. Yep, so that's good. So that's going to significantly increase the breeding rate. As I said before, it doesn't really matter that we've got them all, you know, close together. It doesn't affect their mating. It only affects production when they're sad, which is interesting. Anywho, back to the breeding. Well, so far I've managed to rotate this side out, so all 4 of the females on the left, they've all got 139 crafting skill. So it's a case of this male, when he breeds with these 4 females, they'll all be able to produce a baby that's got 139 crafting skill. So it's just a case of keep repeating it until we get all of these 4 replaced. In the meantime, I'm keeping all of these ones down here. These are all males that we've got. I mean, sometimes I've had twins, sometimes I've had triplets. And I must admit, because my breeding settings are turned up so high, I literally can't keep up. So as soon as like these lot have finished actually producing their babies, I've got to turn it off. There's just too many. I can handle these 2 over here, but oh no. Speaking of which, yeah, I can handle these 2 over here, but that many, that's a lot of Gachas, I must admit. So you're a 139 female. Oh great, what do you produce? Metal. So what I'm doing is I'm making a note of the sort of things I'm interested in. Now this one here, this one actually would be very useful because she'll produce metal, which I would like. Crystal, congealed gas, fibre, thatch, all of these are great things I could do with. You know, it saves me having to go out and farm them, for instance. I could just get her to just keep producing different things on the fly, basically, and if I suddenly get a shortage of metal, for instance, I could say, oh, I'll just focus on metal. Because what I've got to be able to do is produce a load of, well, I say a load of Gachas. I only want a certain amount. I want to pair a male and a female that will get me element dust. I definitely want those. Then it's a case of getting other pairs, so I have to have males, I have to have females to pair them up, just because you've got to keep them at a certain distance. Now, to be honest, I'll be getting around that anyway, because I'll be using the S Plus mod, but it's a case of I'll want to keep a certain amount, and it'll be good if they can produce different resources. Metal's something I'm going to need on a regular basis, because we're going to make ammo. I need the bullets. And then I'll need even more bullets to produce the darts, to then produce like things like shock and trank darts and so on. So it's a case of that's something I definitely always want. Now, so far I've been finding pretty much all of what I could find is useful. The one thing I'm still missing is organic polymer, I must admit. It would be useful if I could have that, because then it would make my life a heck of a lot easier. At the moment I'm making polymer from cementing paste and obsidian, I think it is. There is some obsidian back there I can get, and I can get the cementing paste from the actual beaver dams. But yeah, it'll be great once I get a gacha that can get me organic polymer for when I actually need the polymer for making things. But as soon as she's now fully tamed up, right? Okay. So what I can do is then, before I start them lot mating, I'm going to swap them out, or at least one of them. I'm going to use her, swap her out. I think what we'll call her is... she's flexible. It's just, she'll produce lots of things. So it's very flexible in terms of what she can make. Now I'm just going to take the long route round, but basically now it's a case of I'm just going to keep those 2 breeding at a regular pace. When it comes to the larger team, I'm going to have to do it in a kind of like a stop-start fashion, because as I say, I just can't keep up the breeding rates just so quickly. Anywho, ultimately what I really need is element dust. At the moment I'm going to keep an eye out. I think I've got most of what I need, so what I'm going to focus on is anything that can produce organic polymer, but definitely want some, I want something that can produce element dust. Anything else, I'm not really fussed now. I've got pretty much all of that I need. See you in a while. Well, I'm now at the stage where it's pretty much just a sort of like a rinse and repeat job when it comes to the actual breeding, because all I'm doing now is producing gachas to get better crafting skills, or mutations, if you will. So, as far as the actual gachas I need, I'm pretty much done now. I've got two here, a male and a female, that produce element dust. I mean, as soon as I got a gacha that produced element dust, that was it. I didn't need any, specific other resources, because that's all these two are going to do. And don't care what else they could produce, they're just going to produce element dust and that's it. So I've just got to keep remembering to feed them, and they'll just keep building up the storage of element dust for me. So that'll make my life easier over the long term. It saves me doing things like element vein runs, for instance, or going out to the city to smash up the lights or the actual park benches and so on. So it's a case of, yeah, just leave those two to get on with it. Just got to remember to feed them, basically. Over the far end here, it's pretty much the same, except these two are dedicated to producing metal. But it's again, I'm not really fussed what else they can produce. They're just going to produce metal. So again, I'm just going to keep remembering to feed them. I mean, I could go out to the metal nodes out there, like the ones up there, but the reasoning for me is that this is a longer term strategy where all I've got to do is do much simpler runs, with the Dodicarus over there and the Argy, where we gather stone, come back, feed these actual gachas, and they'll just keep churning out metal for me. I'm finding the stone runs are much easier than the metal runs, because the Argy can only carry so much at a time, which means, yeah, the actual Anklo can mine quite a bit of metal, but I've got to do several runs to bring it all back, whereas with the actual Dodicarus, I just pick her up, hover over a stone rock, she'll smash up about 4, and I'll come back with almost 5,000 stone per run, so it's much, much simpler for me, I'm finding. So long term, I prefer doing it this way. Over here, I've got what I would call flexible gachas. So I've got 2 there and I've got 2 there. Now these ones, they've got a dedicated resource, so one on the left is black pearl, one on the right's metal. So these are the resources that I'm going to find useful, especially things like black pearl, for instance. But once I get to like a certain storage amount, I'll probably want to flip them over to produce other types of resources, because I mean, there's no point just having like tons and tons of black pearl if I'm not using it, for instance. So it's a case of this one, well, it can produce wood, flint, crystal, and silica pearls, which I'm going to find useful. These are useful things for me. So at the moment, it's just focusing on black pearl. This one's on metal, but because they've got 2, you can have like 2. I think it's 2 uncommon resources. I think they are. I deliberately set it up so that one can do like oil and crystal, like this one here. This one will do crystal and silica pearl. So I've got all 3 of those uncommon resources covered out of those 2, and I'm doing more or less the same with those 2 up there. Those 2, one actually does obsidian, and one of them does sap. I mean, crystal is something I definitely want. Look at this one. This one will do silica pearls and crystal. This one will do oil and crystal. So oil and crystal are definitely useful for me. Silica pearl is going to be useful as well. So I'm keeping them, all of those options open. Now, they all have to be able to do fungal wood. Again, it's easy for me to go out and just, like use a chainsaw, for instance, chop a tree down and cut back, but I'll get about like 1,000 wood per run, because, well, the Argy can only carry so much. So it's a case of, it's easier for like a long term. Once I build up quite a lot of obsidian and sap, black pearl, for instance, in storage, I'll flip them over to probably do a lot of wood. I mean, I'm getting quite a lot of oil out of these dung beetles that I've got over there, for instance, but, I might need quite a lot more. So it's a case of I'm trying to make my life a lot easier over the long term by having these gachas that can produce quite a lot of different resources, and it just means I can focus on other more interesting parts of the game. I'm trying to get as much automation, so I was being very, very fussy when it came to the types of resources that the gacha had, decided whether I would actually keep a hold of that gacha or not. Now, incidentally, that one over there that does metal, originally I was probably suggesting I was going to do organic polymer, but I dropped that strategy for the simple reason I ended up with tons and tons of organic polymer. I mean, I'm ending up with quite a lot of loot. You know, they don't just produce resources. Sometimes you'll get a crystal that's got loot in it. So you might get weapons, armor, structures, you name it. You get quite a lot of things out of these crystals. And when you break them down in the grinder, I'm just getting so much organic polymer, it's crazy. So it's a case of there's no point having one that's dedicated to organic polymer. Black pearl is definitely useful. So is the obsidian, because I can use the obsidian for cementing paste. I can use the black pearl for the tech stuff. Sap is something I'll need for things like kibble and so on. So these are all things that I do definitely want to use. So there's just no point having one that's, you know, specialises in organic polymer where I'm never going to be using it to produce any. Now, over here, we've got two of them that are just going to produce loot, or at least that's the longer term strategy. So I've got one that produces metal, which is going to be useful. I'm always going to want metal because I want, you know, bullets, darts, trank darts, shocking trank darts. I need to repair stuff. I'm going to need a lot of metal to get a lot of metal ingots, so it made sense to have one that does metal. As the crafting skill gets higher and higher, it'll start to produce actually more loot than actual metal resources in its crystals. So that's over the long term, I'll get a lot of metal out of this one, but eventually I'll start getting a lot of actual loot instead. So I thought I'd pick a gacha that's got a resource I'm interested in. Now this one does black pearl. I've actually got another one which is in a cryo fridge which actually does element dust, but I've kept that one in the cryo fridge because I can get experience out of that a lot quicker, and that's what I want. I want tons and tons of experience to get much higher crafting skills. So this one, for instance, she's up to like 183 so far. This one, it's got one, so we're now up to 165. So I've got to get up to something like 260, which I don't see me being able to get with these two. I don't think I'll ever get these to 260 because I'm only getting something like 1.4 every time I increase that level, and it's just not practical. You look, I think I was doing the maths, and it's like 85 levels I would need. You can't get it. The maximum you can get out of a dino is about 75 extra levels. So it ain't gonna happen. So for that reason, I've just called these temp. So this one's just getting on with it and producing whatever she can, while the one that stays in the cryo fridge in order to get, well, just a bit of a test really, just out of curiosity, to see how far ahead that one will be compared to that one that's doing black pearl, for instance, while it's crafting things. Now in the meantime, because of that limitation, I've moved all of the breeding team right the way out of here, so they're out of the way. That's allowed me to place my gachas far enough apart from each other, and I have to have these ones further away from them. So over there we've got our male breeder, but I ended up actually just gutting this team. Once I realised you can actually get a mutation in the crafting skill, I replaced all of the females that they're all identical. They've all got the same stats, they're at the same level, so when we get a mutation, we're all going to be, well in this case, I'm going to be looking for an actual gacha that comes out at level 232. Any other level isn't worth keeping because I know it won't have the mutation that level 230 male's got. He's got 2 crafting skill mutations at the moment. And it's a case of, yeah, it's taking a long time, a lot longer than I was anticipating. I mean, I've done this before for a long time now with mutations. I mean, you've got like 6 stats here. And normally the chances of you getting a mutation is slim. The chance of you getting one in a specific specific stat even slimmer. So now that we've actually got a 7th stat, it is very, very difficult, I'm finding, to get a crafting skill. I mean, it wasn't actually that difficult to get a couple of element dust producing gachas. It didn't take that much breeding, but this crafting skill is taking forever and a day. So once I actually got to a point where all of these gachas were produced, I thought, well, in that case, I'm going to see what it's like if I use the S+ mutator. And to be honest, it still helps. I mean, I'm getting quite, every dino that pops out has a mutation, but I'm still struggling to get one that's got a more mutations in crafting skill than the male here. I get quite a lot of like 228s, for instance, occasional 232. But yeah, I can see it's going to take a long time, and that's the reason why I kept those two down there as like temporary ones. At least over time they'll get better. Whereas with the breeding, I have no idea how long this is going to take. I might be finished this map by the time I actually get there. I mean, I'm thinking even like 10 levels in the crafting skill might not be enough, and I'm only at level 2 so far. But I shall persevere, because the trouble is, I mean, that mutator down there, it needs 10 element for each pulse. Now when you're doing it with dinos that lay eggs, I can get about 2 runs out of one pulse. But because these are, they all gestate the baby, it's a case of I'm only getting, well, 1 dino or 1 gacha per female at every pulse. Yeah, so statistics aren't looking good for me here, I must admit. So yeah, I'm going to persevere with those 2 down there. Actually, out of curiosity, go and have a look and see what this female is actually up to. So she'll be sitting among these 3 here. So yeah, that's her there. Female element, loot. Well, just out of curiosity, so I'll have a look and see how many XP she's got compared to that other one. Right, so she's 228, so she just popped out. I don't know. I'm assuming she's got an A mutation. Yeah, so she's got one mutation, which is at level 141. So she's just been sitting around in a cryopod for quite a while. And I'm quite keen. There you go, XP. So she's got 28 levels. So I mean, we can push her crafting skill. Quite high levels so far. So she's at 180 just from sitting around. So that's much better than that metal one, for instance. So I mean, I've had dinos that have been left like lying around the base for ages and ages because they were in. I don't mind getting some hull pellets. I've had dinos that have just been sitting around the base ending up like 50 odd levels, which is ideal. That's the sort of thing I'm looking for. On the other hand, I've had ones that have just been left in, like a cryo fridge like that for a reasonably short amount of time, and they've ended up with about 50 odd levels. So that's like a longer term plan basically. I'm just going to leave her there because she'll get I reckon she'll get much higher XP than those. Just out of curiosity, I'll look to see what when that metal one showed up, because he doesn't have many. I mean, I still keep feeding. I can't land on the water, can I? Fuck you down there, mate. Let's see what he's level 245. So which one did you come from? Yeah, so this one, you see, this one came from the same male with 1 mutation, and he's got much less XP. Now she's from. Now she's been around since the dawn of time. Basically, she was the one. Yes, she was the first one I was going to keep for Black Pearl. That's why she's got so much XP in comparison. But it took me much longer. I did a heck of a lot of breeding over several days before I got an actual that male with 1 level of mutation. So it just goes to show that it is definitely better. Once you get that gacha that you're interested in, just dump it into the cryo fridge, and it'll just save you a ton of time. But anyhow, I can see this, as I say, is going to take a long time. So I think the next thing is to work out how to make this whole process better, how to automate it. I want to make my life even easier. But of course, that's all for another episode.